Please watch the video until the end. Every second matters. Chapter 1. The Files. I first opened the envelope on a rain-masked Tuesday, the kind of weather that makes the city smell older. My name is Marcus Reed. I teach evidence analysis at a small university, and I have sworn a professional life to the measurable and the rational. I do not believe in spirits. I believe in statistics, in witness reliability, in how memories distort like old film. Then the envelope found me. Inside were 3 thin folders, each stamped with a case number and a terse line. Unexplained, witness testimony attached. No sender. The handwriting was shaky. The ink had bled where the rain had hit it. I do not assume surprises in my mailbox. I assumed a prank. But there was a photograph at the bottom of each folder, grainy, taken at night. Shapes in doorways, a figure at the end of a corridor, a dark pressure at the foot of a bed. They felt like invitations. I decided, against my better judgment, to look. Curiosity, the old engine, not faith, pulled me forward. Chapter 2. The Child at the Window. The first folder belonged to an exhausted man named Daniel Price, a night shift custodian who lived above the bakery on Rowan Street. He had taped his testimony on a handheld recorder, voice wrapped in a burlap of fatigue and fear. He described a child standing at the upstairs window at 3 in the morning. The child didn't move when Daniel flicked the lights. The next morning, water had trickled from under the sill in a shape like a small footprint. He had photographs, 2 that showed a pale blur in the glass. He said the child whispered his name through the pane. When I visited Daniel, his apartment smelled of yeast and lavender. The building tilted like it had aged too quickly. He led me to the window. The glass was pitted, micro scratches like old wounds. I felt an ache there, an absence that wanted to be filled. He told me he had been a single father once, and that his daughter had died years ago, drowned in the river. The description of the child matched precisely and horribly. I listened. I wrote notes. I took measurements. I left with alternative hypotheses, reflections, pareidolia, grief projecting itself like a film on glass. Daniel listened to me list possibilities until his hands trembled. He called me by my daughter's nickname, he whispered. Not just the name, the sound of it. That night, his recorder caught a faint static, and in the middle of it something that could be a child, or it could be wind, said, "Come home." Chapter 3. The Watcher in the Lobby. The second file contained a notarized statement from a security guard, Anika Flores. Only she wasn't a she. The file had been misfiled. The handwriting on the depositions was hers, but the voice recording was of a man with a voice like gravel. He said the lobby of the Holloway building had a person who never left. Residents described seeing a silhouette appear in the camera feeds, standing perfectly still in the lobby at 3 minutes past midnight. It was not on the security guard's rounds. Cameras would catch it, then lose it as if a glare swallowed the pixels. The building super insisted he had checked every floor, that there was no one in the elevator shafts, that maintenance logs showed no signs of improvised access. But the watch list grew. A delivery man reported seeing wet footprints in the marble. A tenant saw breath fog against the stairwell doorway in August. I reviewed the footage. The silhouette was small and bent slightly, like a person with a long coat and a head that leaned too far forward. Twice in the tape, the figure seemed to blink. Twice the video jumped and reformatted the next frame into static. When I slowed it, the edges were wrong, almost too smooth, like a hole cut from the air. My rational mind said apartment security glitches, thermal anomalies, a trick of compressed frames. Yet a temperature sensor on the floor showed a brief fall in ambient temperature every time the figure appeared. It was as if the room exhaled cold. Chapter 4. The Radio Station. The third case was a late-night radio call to a small station that did midnight confessionals. The host, Elias, had been on air for 20 years, interviewing callers who swore to be bereaved, lost, or simply haunted. One morning, he didn't show up. His producer found him slumped at his desk, the console still live. There was a cassette player on the desk, old technology in a modern station, playing a voice. It wasn't Elias's voice. It was a whispering chorus that layered and overlapped, like someone replaying a chopped recording of a funeral. The producer said Elias had been conducting a special, encouraging listeners to speak aloud what they had hidden about their past. He had gotten a call that turned him strange. The last thing on tape was a woman who, through sobs, said a single name, Marcus. They sent me the tape. I have always been skeptical of coincidence. When I heard my name, my real name, on that tape, my skin grew restless as a live wire. The voice was not my voice. It sang the syllables with a tenderness that should have belonged to a memory only I carried. In the caller's words, she listed a series of events that matched things I'd never told anyone. The car in the lane outside my childhood home, the yellow toy soldier, the cracked watch I'd buried in the backyard. The voice said I had forgotten something I promised to remember. It ended with, "You promised to keep us quiet." I drove to the station, every mile measured by rising stomach bile. The city felt different that night, as if the air had rearranged itself subtly around me. The studio smelled of old coffee and magnetized tape. Elias stared at me from a pool of his own hands when the producer mentioned the name. Chapter 5, Crossed Wires. Patterns are what I study. The 3 cases, taken separately, yielded anomalies and reliable skeptical counterpoints. Together, they assembled like a puzzle designed to make my certainty wobble. The child at the window came from a building 2 blocks from the Holloway. The Holloway security footage recorded a figure that had lingered near the bakery at the corner across the street. Elias's caller, when traced by the station, had once lived in the same neighborhood. The names shared by witnesses, small, odd details, a song hummed under breath, coalesced until my clean, measured map of events was no longer tidy. I began to dream in fragments. In the dream, the child pressed a palm to the inside of a window and mouthed my name against the glass. The silhouette in the lobby stood still and listened. The voice on the radio recited my childhood words like scripture. When I woke, I found a sticky note on my bathroom mirror in handwriting I did not recognize. Remember. I started visiting the sites to measure, to photograph, to disassemble claims into variables. Each visit left me with a residue of cold that did not belong to the weather. My thermometer read nothing unusual on paper, but my body reacted as though small needles threaded along my spine. I used infrared cameras, sound filters, background suppression, anything I thought would pry apart cause and effect. The equipment registered oddities. A spectrum analyzer that should have been flat produced, at certain times a low-frequency band like a voice stretched thin. An EMF meter pinged lightly by the bakery window. None of these findings satisfied me, but they combined with the human testimonies into a slow erosion of peace. Chapter 6, The Old Promise. The last night came like a bracket closing. I followed the coordinates that my notes skewered with pins, the bakery, the Holloway lobby, the old radio station with peeling paint. They formed a triangle around the city block where, as a child, I had spent a summer with my cousin. The memory existed like a photograph with a torn corner. I had, in my youth, been party to a small cruelty. We trapped a stray dog in a shed and laughed as it scratched at the door. No one spoke of it afterward. The dog vanished. I did not tell anyone because forgetting is a kind of pardon. But I'd also promised, in some clumsy ritual of childhood, to keep something buried, an act that hinged on silence. The voices I now tracked seemed to like the geometry of silence. They threaded through promises broken and kept. I stood in the Holloway lobby at exactly 3 in the morning, the air distilled to a cold that had weight. The security cameras blinked in time with my breath. At 3 minutes past, midnight -1, the lights dimmed as if the building blinked. The same small silhouette materialized in the footage. It walked only once, toward the surveillance desk. It lifted a hand to the monitor as if to touch the recording of itself, and in the real lobby a child's hand, damp with city rain, pressed against the glass of the revolving door. I understood then, with the clarity of a conclusion you had been avoiding, that these were not random hauntings. They were margins of memory returning to demand an accounting. The voices were not trying to hurt. They were accusing. They called me by the nicknames and the pet names and the private sins I had thought dissolved. The last voice to speak in the lobby was the clearest. The child at the window, the watcher, the woman on the radio, 3 voices folded into one. You promised. I spoke aloud then, to the empty chairs and to whatever listened, and said the things I had not said for a long time. I named the hurt. I named the loss. I admitted the cruelty. The lobby did not exhale. The figure did not dissipate. Instead, it tilted its head, and for a second that felt like a lifetime, I saw an eye where there should have been only darkness. An eye that was not human and yet mirrored every small regret I carried. Then the world snapped. I felt a pressure like an old door closing on me. The surveillance monitors all refreshed and showed a feed from somewhere that was my childhood backyard. Mud, an old toy soldier sitting upright in the soil, a small watch face glinting. I watched a film of myself, younger, burying something, writing it with small hands. The camera showed the dog in the shed, eyes reflecting moonlight, scratching for mercy. My throat shuddered. I had been the unseen audience of my own crime. When the feed cut to black, the room was quiet except for my heart. The voices had not gone. They had been rearranged. The last sound I heard, not from an object but in the inside of my skull, was a child's small voice, precise and impartial. Remember this, Marcus. Keep it. If this story unsettled you, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, comment with your thoughts, and share the video.